I was born in 2000, and my mother always jokes around that I've been traveling from the time I was in the womb. It's not really a joke though. My family traveled to the UK when my mom was pregnant with me, and that was my first official trip. Of course, I don't remember it. My father has worked in aviation for as long as I remember, starting as an engineer and working his way up the corporate ladder. At first, we'll take advantage of bonuses and travel to see friends and family. The UK, South Africa, and Botswana were our most frequent destinations at that time. But later on, as he got promoted, we branched out and went to further places. For example, Singapore, which I will personally never forget. In total, I have traveled to over 10 countries and had repeated long stays in 5 of them, which doesn't sound like a lot. But taking into consideration the extroverted sponge I am, I like to pick up and absorb all different kinds of things, which is kind of what led me to the varied identity that I have now and why I sometimes feel like I am neither here nor there. In the present day, the phrase neither being here nor there is something many international students and immigrants feel daily. From the early 1980s, anthropologists Nina Glick-Schiller and Georges Furan, among others, played with the idea that contemporary migrants in the US, especially Haitians and Caribbeans, were able to endorse multiple identities that did not fit territorialized concepts of identity. For example, being called immigrant Haitians or immigrant Jamaicans. Instead, they coined the term transnational identity. Their statements that the migrants' identities in political activities were bounded neither by their country of origin nor the country of settlement gave way to the qualification as transnational. A transnational identity acknowledges that we may leave some of our cultures behind and pick up new ways of being as we travel across continents, searching for a better way of life. The anthropologist explained that countries quickly embraced the idea of transnationalism of migrants who were neither here nor there. These breadcrumbs we leave behind create lines and connections which create a complex and interesting dynamic globalized identity and create the roots of globalization and what leads to eventually having a transnational identity.
So we're having an international student Thanksgiving dinner.
The end of 78.
Struggling against cultural norms to fulfill her unlikely dream.
Most of these surveys cite safety, employment. Those have been the push factors out of South Africa.
Racial discrimination, they often suffer simply because they are different.
Almost 30% of professionals leave Africa for greener pastures each year.
Another strange thing is I actually feel a lot more comfortable speaking in English. And this is usually not a problem because I've been learning in South Africa and I travel a lot. But when I go back home, my family members prefer speaking in Shona, which is also not a problem. But when I start to communicate with them, at some point I feel like I'm running out of vocabulary and I kind of get tired of talking. I conducted a survey and interviewed over 40 immigrants and international students on Zoom. They all say they had language issues. They felt worried and weird about their accents or uncomfortable speaking their mother tongue. Language is a way of belonging. It can put up barriers between us and our connections in our new countries and even between those of us and people at home. Language, among other things, can be heavily affected by travel and relocation. In my research, I found that only 35% of transnational individuals spoke their mother tongue often, while 16% admitted only speaking it when they call it home. I asked a few participants about their identity, language, and even just about how they think. What do you dream in? What language do you dream in?
English.
Only English?
Only English. In Swahili, not really.
English. English, yeah.
Do I dream in? In my Igbo language.
Dream in Igbo?
I dream in Igbo.
I did linguistics in first year, so they kind of explained that you think and you dream in your native tongue, or at least the tongue you're used to speaking. And because I've been speaking English fluently for over 20 years or so now, it's hard to even imagine myself dreaming in another language or even thinking in another language. I still think in English, even when I'm thinking of saying words in a different language, it's the English version that I'm translating.
But it's not only language that connects people. Even though I speak Shona, I have felt like my friendships and bonds at home are not as strong as they are here at school.
In 2016, my parents, they decided that the three of us should go and visit Kenya. So I went, and also just to take a break from here because I was depressed. So we went, and the first week we reached there, one of my grandmothers had a fundraising. So we had one of those things, and then one of my grandmothers came there with her friends, and her friends was laughing at us. They're like, "Oh, these are the foreigners from South Africa, foreigners." So I was a bit touched because I keep hearing that word every time in South Africa. I never thought that I would hear it in Kenya.
But I wanted to study here for a better future, just like many of my colleagues. The same reason why my dad worked in Ghana, in Rwanda, and right now in Bangladesh, just so that we can have a better future and a better livelihood. According to my survey, which included immigrants for 4 different continents, all the participants have been working and schooling away from home for an average of 5 years, with some of them even working over 18 years away from home. 20.7% of UK students are international students, and 160 million employees around the world are migrant workers. All of these individuals, all of these identities are looking out for new and better opportunities in life. But at what cost? For more insight, I went and spoke to the first and best person to comment on transnationalism and working away from home, my dad. Since he is away for work and I am all the way in South Africa, we had to have our conversation over Zoom.
Well, my travel has affected my family as much as it has affected me, in that, it feels like we have borrowed time together. We end up just having very little time. Either it's holiday time and then that's it, or it's home time, which is quite limited because since I moved out of Zimbabwe, I have been visiting somebody in Zimbabwe. So at times, I think we tend not to relate to the same issues in the same context.
With every move and every employment that my dad had, I feel like I learned something. I created bonds, I created friendships, and I think our family left a little bit of ourselves there, just like how we took a little bit of those places as well. But as much as we traveled and as much as we went to different places and met new people, my parents always made sure that I remained grounded. Remaining grounded to others might mean sticking to your cultures and beliefs. For example, I'm Christian, and we are a generous and modest family. No matter where we go, we have to maintain our beliefs and culture. Others travel and actually find beliefs that they feel easier to align with and don't change at all.
Okay, so my name is Dr. Chikezie Uzuebunam. I am a lecturer at the School of Journalism and Media Studies here at Rhodes University. For myself, no matter where I go in this world, I'm always carrying my Nigerianness with me. I like to say that I am proudly Nigerian, proudly African, and wherever I am, whatever I do, and the work that I do as an academia has really taken me to a lot of places. I've been opportunity to travel the world, but each time I travel and each time I experience new places, I always go with my full self, my full authentic self.
I will tell you that home is always best.
Okay.
That is true. Home is always best. But next to home, I was quite comfortable in Ghana because there hasn't been any huge culture shock or culture difference between Ghana and Zimbabwe. Yes, in terms of traditions, we may vary, but because of the background to the history and the colonization, I felt quite comfortable on my first move out of Zimbabwe, which was in Ghana.
83% of the survey participants admitted noticing drastic differences between their beliefs and practices at home and where they work and school. So with answers so varied, why does it feel like everyone changes in a different way, even though everyone does change one way or another? My favorite thing about a transnational identity is actually not just the travel and learning new experiences, but the fact that you don't even need to leave your country or your house to have a transnational identity. For example, Sonia.
Well, we could all argue that you can't trust everything you see on the internet. But based on my experience, I've traveled to China, South Korea, Japan, and more recently to Thailand, just through the venture into language. And if you ask me if I'm transnational, well, I'll leave that up to you to decide. But for me, it's just being part of so many things while being in my space. So I'm creating a world of my own through absorbing worlds of many other people.
I like to study how young people grow up in a digital world or in the world of media. So I think that for many young people, even in the African context, social media represents possibilities for them because they could be in a rural place somewhere in Nigeria and they are experiencing what life is like in America, making a lot of friends on social media and joining in conversations that they would otherwise not join because of the potentiality and the materiality of and the affordances of social media.
I am definitely not the same. I will never be the Tanya who traveled to Ghana for the first time in 2014 or the Tanya who settled in South Africa in 2019. I have great friends and I have an extended international family. I don't look or sound the same. I am not one identity, at least not anymore, and I am neither here nor there. It has given me issues, but at the same time, it has also opened a lot of doors. I know I'm not alone. With the influence of social media, you don't even need to leave your home or your country to have a transnational identity. Transnationalism is the future, but also the negativity might overcome the positive effects of having an interdimensional identity. The truth is, we can never really know right now. So, are you neither here nor there? Or maybe you're actually just in both places?